I'm trying to center on this concept of value. So, I can spend time with another person because I value how I feel when I'm with them for an hour. It's uplifting. I leave in a good mood, and that's very valuable to me. So I'm even motivated to buy their dinner
Mm.
uh, because maybe they can't afford it, but I, the trade in my mind is fair. I get an hour of this brilliant company, and hopefully they think it's fair that they get a nice meal.
Maybe
Mhm.
they
Is
also
that
like
what?
talking to you, Carmen.
And they do. It's possible. But is that what you mean by value, or am I just
Uh,
totally missing
kind
the
of.
boat?
No, I mean, uh, value is one of these difficult concepts. It's like, I mean, people often distinguish between price and value. Like price is this sort of very well-determined kind of thing, and the price is, whatever people will pay for it, kind of thing. Whereas value is can be like that. Like there are forms of it that behave more that way, but it's also this vastly more general notion that has an element of subjectivity in it because different people will find different things valuable. And so some people will pay some amount of currency, which is a representation of a certain kind of value, in order to have experiences that are providing value in some other way. So there is an exchange of value happening, and that involves both. But I think, at least with respect to the machine kinds of things, it's probably more on the like less of the experiential value and more of the just raw economic
Yeah.
value in some sense.
But this
But
is
as, but as you get into economies of tokens, where the token is something that is designed into a system in order to represent some other kind of value, and you can have exchange of that, then you have ways of tokenized representations of these kinds of things. But it's really experimental, I think, at this point, how that will actually reflect in a functional way the kind of thing that you're describing. Anyway, that's my rough sense.
okay. Question. I am questioning this idea that you can exchange value. Okay, because in Carmen's example, which I think is really interesting, that value is a human experience. It's a subjective experience, right? The value didn't get exchanged. The value arose in her. It arises
Hmm.
internally. It stays internal. She experiences it. It never gets exchanged. So is the idea of exchange of value one that's real? And you're not exchanging an internal subjective experience. You're exchanging at the some I think in the world of capitalist systems, we're used to this idea that exchanging money makes value arise in us, the feeling that there's a value has arisen in us. But is that because we are actually into the relationship? Like that money creates a relationship and we're actually experiencing like a dopamine surge because, and maybe a serotonin surge, like maybe it's really validating to just say, yeah, I'm in relationship with the outside world. In other words, I wonder about this idea of exchanging value, or if you just exchange anything, the exchange of anything can or cannot, depending on the person's psychology, lead to a feeling of value. And then how does that relate to, for instance, machine consciousness? So if machines begin, as AIs begin to potentially have more self-awareness or have more subjective experience, um, are they starting to feel valued when they're being asked to do tasks or getting money to pass along to the person who built them or whatever? Can value arise in them? So again, not exchanged, but just arise.
No, I don't know the answer to that question,
I
but
know, me
um,
neither.
it
What do you
it brings
think?
up it brings up so two things I think here. One is, I suspect there are a number of different senses of value that are being sort of are flowing into each other.
Yeah.
Um, and the sort of, in the sense, what I'm talking about exchange of value is where you have things that behave more like currency or economic tokens or something like that, where there is a literal exchange of one thing for another, things that are regarded as valuable because they can do something with them. So either it's information, I can do something with that information, or it's money and I can, pay someone to do something, or I can pay for my electricity. Whereas the subjective experience of value is something different. And so it's not obvious how you tokenize that. And it, as you point out, it behaves in a different way. It's something that arises out of an interaction as opposed to something that I already possess that I can give to somebody else. That's one element of it. And the other, I think, is the other way people often talk about this is exchange of energy of some kind. And you could think of, to me, that there ought to be a way, like if there's a physics of economics, it will be based in thermodynamics. And so there'll be an energetics of it in a literal sense. And I know that systems like that exist. People have mapped them out, but I think it's very hard to have a sort of direct correspondence between energy and money. But supposing there's something like that, there's, in any kind of interaction, there's energy expenditure, and for it to feel like a fair exchange, there needs to be some equal contribution on either side. And people talk in those terms about fair exchange of energy in, spiritual circles, but I think otherwise as well. But given this idea that there's, money you could think of as a form of potential energy, because it carries a capacity to do work, like you give this to somebody and it will make things happen. So whether that's work literally or by analogy in the same sense as work in physics, I don't know. But there ought to be a way of thinking of things in these terms, and that does capture more aspects of what's going on in the broader sense of creation of value out of interaction and the exchange that's happening to make that happen.